Wow, okyali mulabi mulungi ominyo live ku Soul TV akawungezi kano akalero negatiddwako Apollo Tusime nkwaniriza nnyo mu kanyomero
sanyuse nange
kafaana bwe kati
okutuuka
wotuukidde nga ekimu ku bintu ebisinga kakati okukwata omubabiri wa Uganda kye kigambo ky'akalulu ka America. Joe Biden owa Democratic Party ne Donald Trump ow'ekibiina ekya Republican ekiri mu buyinza addako otaddako Joe Biden alya talya kakati yembeera eriwo bannayuganda bangi balinganga kumpi ate kati abafuusa Abamerica. Kiki kyolowooza ku kino?
Well, bannayuganda ensonga eno ebakwatako nga abatuuze ku nsi kuno kwe tuwangaalira ensonga za America zitukwatako. Actually America yemu ku nsi ezikwatira ku ggwanga Uganda mu nsonga z'ebyobulamu n'ebyobuyigirize ku kitundutundu ekinene kya budget eky'ebitongole ebyo ebibiri America yekiteekamu ensimbi. So ekibeerawo mu America oba oliawo ekibi oba ekirungi kibeera kirina engeri gyekikwatirako ddala ku bulamu bw'Abannayuganda. So weewaawo bayinza okuba nga balina ensonga lwaki bandibadde babeera ne interest mu bifa mu America.
Ate ndowooza bw'ogattako n'ensonga nti ne Uganda nayo mu bbanga si ddene ejja kuba yina okulonda obwa pulezidenti. Kaakati waliwo ensonga ekwatagana ne bannayuganda okugenda okukola mawanga ag'ebweru n'ebirala bingi byonna nga bwe biri kaakati biki ebivaamu bannayuganda bali batya mu biseera bya covid kiri kitya. Mu kanyomero Limelight kogenda okulaba Apollo Tusime agenda kutuusaako bingi ebikwata ku ngeri eno.
With one of the youngest populations in the world and a small labor market, Uganda's employment challenge is projected to intensify if the government fails to come up with serious interventions. According to the 2016-2017 National Household Survey report, Uganda's national unemployment rate is at 9.2%, with an employment rate for youth aged 18 to 30 years at 13.3%. These rates are higher among young women and youth, especially those living in urban areas. In absence of a publicly funded welfare system, those unable to secure decent employment cannot sit around and be unemployed. They resort to survival tactics, either by joining the hustle of underemployment in the informal sector or finding other means of survival. Dreams have been shattered, life aspirations summarily blocked, and hopes crushed. This unfortunate trend hinders the structural transformation required to drive Uganda's economic development. At the same time, the Ugandan government has set out several strategic plans and initiatives to tackle the issue. Development policies and projects have been rolled out. Despite these job creation efforts, the youth employment challenge has hardly diminished. And now, with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, the employment situation in the country has worsened, forcing certain opportunities into a shutdown. The externalization of labor program, through which young people have been seeking employment opportunities in Arab countries, especially in the Middle East, was also suspended despite its own challenges. This puts lives and rights of about 16,000 Ugandans stuck in foreign lands at a high risk. And this is the Limelight.
Hello and welcome to this evening's program. It is the Limelight and my name is Tusime Apollo. Now, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to have widespread impact on workforces globally, migrant workers are among those bearing the brunt of the crisis. Human rights groups recently warned that COVID-19 restrictions, including lockdowns, have led to claims that labor camps have become virtually prisons or virtual prisons, and concerns of workers' welfare, including forced layoffs without wages or promise of rehiring, have been severely sounded. These conditions, compounded with lack of an effective worker monitoring system has left many workers trapped in exploitative conditions. With less government intervention, rights and obligations spelled out in employment contracts have been violated, leaving lives of many Ugandans, actually more than 165,000 Ugandans working in Arab countries, at the mercy of their employers. Recently, the labor exporting companies closed shop and suspended their operations when actually they are the ones the government delegated with the responsibility to monitor workers' welfare and the safety of the migrant Ugandan workers. The companies cited prolonged closure after months with no income. Now, without these labor companies to monitor the affairs of Ugandan migrant workers and an ill-equipped embassy or embassies in Arab countries, now all Ugandans, migrant workers who are in Arab countries are really at risk. Now, this time I need to bring in my guest, and actually she is the Secretary General of Uganda Association of Recruitment Agencies, UWERA, and this is the association that brings together private companies that were licensed by government to facilitate employment opportunities abroad, especially in Arab countries. Ms. Caroline Binamario, you are right on Soul TV, and we would want to hear from you. First and foremost, the role private companies or your association do in safeguarding the safety and rights of migrant workers, especially in the Middle East.
Thank you very much, Salt TV, for hosting UWERA and for hosting me as the Secretary General. We are licensed by the government of Uganda, and we are regulated by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. We have regulations and guidelines that we abide by. The first primary responsibility of a licensed company is to monitor the migrant workers that they place outside there.
Caroline, can you briefly tell us, from the information you get today, what is the current state of safety and welfare of migrant workers? Now that you closed business, you no longer monitor these workers. What is the current state, and what could be the challenges these people face in Arab countries?
Wherever we place migrant workers, we have embassies there. So when we suspended our operations, we asked the embassies to come in, and we asked the migrant workers to come in. This is because the sector was hit just like any other sector. And when the airport opened, we thought that we would resume normal operations. However, to our surprise, we woke up to a press release by the regulator extending the suspension that was put there in March due to the COVID pandemic. We felt that this was not fair for us, but more especially for the migrant workers who are already placed, and also the candidates who already had visas in their passports and ready to go and work. They had their contracts which they had signed, and they were set to leave when the pandemic came in. Actually, others were in transit. People who were on, say, Egypt Air, Fly Dubai, they reached Egypt, they reached Dubai, and they were forced to come back because the destination countries, some of the destination countries had already closed their airports.
So how is it now? And what about their welfare? How are they coping now that there are these issues, the airports are closed, and probably, like I heard, they are not in the homes. For the case of housemaids, they are in camps.
We have had who have, for if I can cite the case of Saudi Arabia, who have run away from homes. However, our embassy in Saudi Arabia is handling. Sometimes we get direct calls from these migrant workers, and the best we can do is to cancel them. We have many of them also in deportation centers. A deportation center is a government facility. They access medical, but psychologically, especially those who have finished their contracts, need to return. However, with our industry suspended, we cannot do much to help them return. We are the ones as companies who have the primary information of these candidates, where they come from, their next of kin, whom to contact in case of what. So with many companies closed, it is almost impossible to monitor or help.
Thank you so much, Caroline. But let me introduce my other guest, Prima Kwagala. Prima Kwagala is a human rights lawyer. She's the chairperson of female lawyers in the Uganda Law Society, and she is the executive director, Uganda Women's Pro Bono Initiative. Prima Kwagala, you are live on Sol TV, and we would want to hear from you in regard to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. What employment rights are at stake, especially to Ugandan migrant workers who are actually in Arab countries?
There are several rights that migrant workers in Saudi Arabia enjoy. As human beings, they're entitled to all human rights, entitled to a human being. They have a right to be treated with dignity. They have a right to occupational health, to ensure that they work in a good environment. They have a right to health care if they fall sick or in any case find problems. They have a right to live. I have had the opportunity to read several contracts that some of these young women sign before they leave. And in those contracts, each of them is entitled to a day of leave, 1 day of leave. They are entitled to sleep of at least 8 hours. They are entitled to a pay at the end of each month. So all rights that accrue to a human being living in Uganda or in a wealth nation is accrued to these young ladies when they go. They are entitled to all human rights.
Ms. Prima, we are informed some migrant workers in the Arab countries got their contracts expired, and now they are stuck. They are actually in camps, and there is no way out because airports are closed and all those things. You must have information about what is happening. What can you tell us about what exactly is happening to these people?
Well, I have had contact with at least 3 people in Saudi Arabia that I've had are having difficulties currently. I've had an opportunity to speak to a husband who is here with the children. She has been able to send messages through social media to these people, and several other girls send messages and videos of their contracts have expired, they are due to come back, but they are finding hard time finding flights to come back. They cannot afford the same. The recruiters, some of them have closed shop, some have left. It's not easy to know who in the Ministry of Gender or the liaison officers with the Ugandan embassies in Saudi Arabia can be contacted, because I am aware that there's been a backlog of reports at the Ministry of Gender that have not been addressed. So we have filed some cases with the courts of law to ensure that these young women and girls can find redress. But at the moment, it's really a state of despair for most of them, because with the regulations in place, the government seems to have abdicated their role and given it to recruitment agencies. Now, recruitment agencies have run away. They say they are on strike. They are not going to work with the government if the government is not going to consider them as priority during this COVID pandemic. So it's a bit of a challenge, and we hope that the government can get involved as soon as possible to have some of these very desperate women evacuated and brought back.
Thank you so much, Prima, but I will come back to you. Let me first cross over to Caroline. Caroline, you talked about, of course, we know that we have embassies in some of these countries, and you said that embassies lack capacity. That's why the government delegated the role of monitoring these migrant workers to you, the private companies who facilitate movement of these people to seek employment in those Arab countries. Why? And why isn't government working on it? Why are embassies not, facilitated to do that? Why? What do you think is the issue?
First of all, I would like to correct the previous speaker that the recruitment companies have not run away. This was something that came as an act of God. COVID has hit the whole world. Even the partners, the other side in Saudi Arabia, are equally facing the same challenges. And so are we. Even our own employees whom we employ here, we have about more than 4,000 employees that we have in our offices who are seated. We've not run away from our responsibilities, but we are only trying to catch the attention of the government. We have submitted several proposals to them, and all we are saying is, can we please go back to table and we see a way forward? Whereas the embassy might not be well facilitated as what it can do, it has done well, I can say. Escalation of very many girls in deportation centers actually stems from the time of the pandemics. I would like to also inform you that if you look at flight that came in from Saudi Arabia, it had 278 girls, and about 230 had been trafficked. So what happened during COVID, most of these girls who were trafficked and were living in homes of, say, Kenyans or Nigerian women who rent homes and put in these girls and get them higher paying jobs. When COVID hits, to abandon the home, everyone scattered to the streets everywhere. So that's how we get that big number. It's an escalation of the effects of COVID-19. We've not this past. We have not had it as bad as this in the past. However, everything has their solutions. The government has heard us. We have been engaging them. Sooner than later, we are going to have a solution to everything that is happening, especially in Saudi Arabia.
All right, Caroline Binamario there, but briefly, let me hear from Prima Kwagala. Prima Kwagala, what could be missing, what could be lacking in the structural arrangement between governments of Uganda, the government of Uganda, and the destination countries, as far as, to ensure safety and decent employment and protection of rights of migrant workers? What could be lacking, especially around this time?
I would say what has lacked really has been government. Government has slacked in its regulatory function. The government of Uganda, I'd like to applaud Carol for what she just submitted. I mean, as labor recruiters, they are businessmen. They're in this thing for the money. But the government of Uganda is responsible for the lives of these people that are taken outside the country. These people are remitting funds to this country. These people trusted these labor recruiters because the government said, hey, these are the people we have licensed to get you jobs. But the role of government does not stop there. The government has a job to monitor where these Ugandans have gone. The government has a role. It owes each Ugandan in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East or wherever these people have taken these people. They owe them a duty of care. These are tax-paying Ugandans. Each head that is living is a tax-paying Ugandan. Each life that leaves this country is important. The government has an obligation, they have a duty to monitor, they have a duty to regulate this trade. They are directly in charge. They have human rights obligations. They owe us as Ugandans. And their inability to periodically check on these women and girls when they leave this country is leading to death. It's costing us lives. I know Carol just mentioned that this is an act of God, but I mean, come on, when the pandemic happened and the lockdown was happening, if you were living in this country and you saw foreign nationals in this country, foreign embassies in this town were calling their citizens by phone, do you need to leave this country? We have an airline to leave. I mean, the media, you have been sharing videos of these women crying in detention facilities. I mean, our government cannot even afford a decent reception facility for people who are remitting billions of dollars back here. It is really absurd. I know I have worked on a case this year. We had to repatriate a young lady that was crying since December that she's sick and cannot be taken to a hospital. Her contract clearly stated that the employer is responsible for her health care. From December to March, this young lady was not taken to a hospital. She was only taken to a hospital the day she died and issued a post-mortem. And when we went to the government to start demanding why they could not repatriate this person, say, oh, according to the regulation we put in place, the recruitment agency is responsible. No, this is a private entity and the government cannot start abdicating its role. So the government has really failed us where it concerns matters of regulation, periodically checking on these people, funding and facilitating labor liaison officers in these destination countries where Ugandans are sent. We deserve more, and I'd like to call upon the government across this media platform to do more. We need a law. As the Parliament needs to pass a law, we don't even have a substantive law in place at the moment to regulate these people, to hold these people to account. What we have in place is, you know, a ministerial function that the minister put in place, but that's not enough. This is something that is causing us gross loss of human lives. Our sisters, our mothers are dying in very indignified circumstances. It's unacceptable in this day and age. Something needs to be done.
I would want you to briefly expound on the good news you've of course broke, that you are engaging government to ensure that you agree and you come back in business and probably you help these distressed Ugandans abroad who are suffering abroad. When probably can we expect those engagements to end and probably we see some help going to these people?
Right now, we are pending cabinet approval for lifting of the suspension. I hope there are some ministers watching this show so that they can help and lobby for the lifting of the suspension, because if the suspension is not lifted, then the placed Ugandans continue to be at a very, very high risk. And whereas Prima insinuated that we are business people and it is only the money that is in it for us, that was Prima, I want to say that is not entirely correct. Yes, this is a service beyond self, because we interact with these youth, with these young girls and young boys before they go. Out of every 10, for example, girls that you interview, 8 are aged between 23 to 35. They are single mothers. They have children, 2, 1, 3, that they want to look after. And you will even task them. We have people who come in with a baby of 9 months and you ask her, where are you leaving your baby? And these people will tell you, we must go and work. What is in it for us here? They will even insinuate, I would rather go and die on job working for my child than stay here and see them hungry. Out of the 100% of the people that have gone out there, 98% are success stories. This is not to say that one life doesn't matter. Every drop counts, every life matters. And that's why we also continue to call upon government that please hear us. Let's work together. Look at our proposals. Come in where we want you to come in. Let's streamline this sector, because this is a global trend. You cannot stop anybody
Caroline,
from moving.
Out of
and
time.
As you even talk about human rights,
Caroline,
yes, as we even talk about human rights, it's my right.
I'll let you go, but of course you acknowledge that indeed we have Ugandans who are distressed and they need help, and really urgent help. Thank you so much, Caroline Benamario, the Secretary General of Uganda Association of External Recruitment Agencies, UERA. And of course, I must thank Prima Kwagala, a human rights lawyer and the chairperson of female lawyers in the Uganda Law Society. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this particular issue, and let's hope all will be done to ensure that the distressed Ugandans that are trapped in Arab countries will be helped, and this challenge will be sorted in the soonest. Thank you so much, our viewers. The Limelight comes to you every Friday in the evening news. My name is Simapolo, and right after the news we are going into Emisinji. You do not have to let or get off your TV. We'll be back next Friday, same time. Good evening and a good night.